episode of Becoming a Techno Wizard. And today we are continuing once again our series on my newsletter, the Journal of Techno Wizardry, talking about a new story of humanity. And last section, we talked about uh, the benefits of being pro-social and the associated, consequences of being antisocial, and how our society is very much an antisocial society. Now it discourages our best traits, which is being social. So this I'm going to talk about the environment of freedom. So it's a long section, so I probably won't do much director's cut. Try to still get this under 10 minutes. So without further ado, let us begin. The environment of freedom. Oh my gosh, wait, I did it again. Sorry. You see, the problem is that now for some reason when I share things, Restream wants to put this big old banner that I'm sharing my screen, and it blocks my title. So I keep forgetting to change my title. Let me do that first, real quick. Part 15, the environment of freedom. It's probably not going to change it online to people that sees this on Twitter, or YouTube, but it is what it is. Okay. So the environment of freedom. What I want to point out here is that many of the problems of our society are not due to human nature or some other mysterious inevitable thing. It's due to our society consistently creating or reinforcing an environment where certain people can violate the rights of others. Yeah, I don't like to use the word rights because that implies the need for some legal framework to allow or enforce or even protect rights. Nonetheless, the whole point behind the term inalienable rights is that these are self-evident. But what we mean to say is what we've always said: freedom. We claim, especially in America, that we want and value freedom, yet we continuously justify the violation of other people's and even our own freedom at the drop of a hat. We claim that security or equality must come at the cost of freedom, or vice versa. That is a false equivalency. Freedom requires equality. It is only when everyone has the same amount of leverage or power that power no longer matters. It is only when everyone has the same amount of power that everyone also has the most amount of personal freedom that does not tread on the freedom of someone else. Only in an unequal world is there people with less freedom than others. It's quite simple. Furthermore, in a world where everyone has ultimate personal freedom and equality, everyone is incentivized to protect each other's freedoms. You have incentive to maximize the security of everyone else because you know if any one person or group gains more power, they will use that against you sooner or later. People love to point to crimes as an example of why we need some sort of hierarchy, some laws in government and police to protect us from bad people. But we must remember that people do crime for a reason. Those reasons are fairly simple: mental illness, desperation, bad laws in and of themselves, accidents, and power imbalance. For each of those reasons, and probably any other you can think of, understanding why the crime happened and solving that underlying problem is more important than merely punishing people. Sure, vindication feels good, but laws or even consequences don't stop people from doing crimes. Furthermore, actually addressing the underlying causes of crime is the most effective way of stopping crime before it happens. Let's break this down. Mental illness and desperation. If people are mentally ill or desperate, it's much better to figure that out and put programs in place to help them or otherwise mitigate the risk of their mental anguish. This includes people who steal or kill just for the heck of it, because these people are mentally ill. We know this. We call it kleptomania or psychopathy or sociopathy, malignant narcissism, etc. It would therefore be far more effective to figure out what causes these illnesses and or identifying their existence than directly addressing the people in the context of those illnesses. I should have placed that better. But what I'm saying here is that we should, identify these illnesses, these problems, and in order to directly address them, on that level rather than saying, oh, there's just bad people. Like, what does that mean? Why are they bad? Bad laws. Many laws are themselves unfair and put in place to target certain people. Such laws are not a net good for society. These are the things we look back on, if we matured at all, and realize was really bad and stupid. That is Jim Crow laws, suffrage limitations, slavery. Even things like protecting property is often misused, abused, or just useless and causes more problems than it solves. IP and private property, for instance, are one of the worst offenders of this that most people still think is useful, even though it's not. I'll address this later, though. And yeah, I have a whole section about private property and why that's a kind of really terrible way of looking at rights. But we'll get to it. Accidents. Accidents happen. It's better to manage these on a case by case basis and figure out why the accident was made and reduce the chances it will happen again. We sort of do this, but often overcorrect and undercorrect due to whatever is more popular at the time, according to public opinion, precedent, or private interests. And to give some examples here, what I mean is like, it could be crimes of passion. For instance, you're in a heightened state and then you do something, or if you literally just a car accident or something like that, stuff like that, right? All of that can be addressed through on a case by case basis, and really should be addressed on a case by case basis, but we don't do that. We sway by public opinion, by whatever people think is really bad or really good, or they look to like look to try and see at the people involved and see what color they are. Then you say, oh yeah, that person is definitely a criminal. That person, no, they were just having a bad day, right? We try to justify these things, give outs and then precedent. So if something happened before, in this general, kind of idea, then people will say, oh yeah, it's this precedent for this, do what they did last time, even though it may not be applicable this time. And of course, private interest, which is lobbying and all this other bullcrap. So yeah. Power imbalances. Power imbalance is the biggest problem. It's the self feeding system that precipitates corruption and tyranny and such. The only way to stop this is not to make laws against abuse of power, because those inevitably get overturned, ignored, or abused anyways by those with more power, but destabilizing power structures in the first place. Don't even allow people to gain the power they will inevitably abuse in the first place, or rigorously work to take down those who do. I probably could have written this a lot better, but you get it. This is why the ultimate freedom is to have equal decision making power with no hierarchies. At least laws are a codification of what a community is already doing. They serve as a sort of guideline based on historical precedent, but they should not be held as some sort of commandment. That defeats the purpose and just puts the power into the hands of those that wish to enforce or interpret the laws in their favor. So, yeah, I use historical precedent here as a sort of historical evidence to see, what has happened. But oftentimes, precedent in law, right, is a almost like a commandment of oh, it happened like that before, it has to happen the same way now, right? Or we have to treat it the same way now. But in reality, it's more guideline. It gives you an idea of how you dealt with it before. But that shouldn't necessarily mean that this is how you have to deal with it now. And I know there's some, of course, always nuances in the current justice system, but that's the gist of it. Similarly with cultural traditions, goodness, they are useful only insofar that they show us how things were done, but that should not limit us from doing things differently as times change. Furthermore, if only some people actually have the power to put laws in place, then it's no longer a record of what the whole community agrees to do. It's just what some people want everyone to do, regardless if others disagree. Therefore, it's once again an abuse of power. There is there's just no reason to ever have permanent hierarchies that is not born out of an inherent ability to violate someone else's freedom. And not sure if I go into it, but this part is really important too. How the powers are put in place, then it's no longer a record of what the whole community agrees to do, right? A lot of the laws that we have today, most of us don't even know what laws are in place, right? That's really, really concerning. That should seriously concern us. So you can be breaking the law. Most of us have, right? To you people talking about, oh, criminals just don't break the law. Well, most of us have broken the law. If you ever, ran a stoplight or a stop sign, if you ever downloaded music that you didn't buy, if you ever shared music that you did buy, right? If you ever, you know, there's like so many cases of laws that are in place, but people break them all the time because they don't know or they don't think it's that serious or whatever, right? But that's the problem. That's a serious problem. So let's continue. Even if you are the bestest person ever and use your power responsibly, you will necessarily violate other people's freedom. You might say perhaps that person deserved it, or you're doing this for their own good or the greater good of all. But who is to say? How do you know such use of power is ever actually warranted? What happens if history shows that you were wrong, and it often does? The damage will already be done. You will inevitably become the sole or main component as to whether or not other people deserve to have their freedoms violated. Even if you have a wise counsel, it's highly unlikely and historically demonstrable that your predecessors will not all be the same level of fair and perfect. This is why limiting people's freedom should always be the very last resort, rather than the default first that we have today. Any system in which a few people have more decision-making power than everyone else is a system in which they are the inevitable single point of failure. We can beat this topic all day going through all sorts of examples and cases and what ifs, and I'd actually like to do that one day. But it all comes down to that simple fact: power over others is inherently antisocial and anathema to a free and equal society. So, thank you. That was this section. Super excited once again to get into the next section, science and technology. Um, but let me know, as always, what you thought, what you agree with, disagree with. We can have a discussion. And yeah, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Have a great day. See ya.